You're listening to Solar Insiders, a fortnightly podcast that shines the light on the world's biggest energy source. Solar Insiders is presented by Giles Parkinson, the editor of Renew Economy, and Sophie Vorath, the editor of One Step Off the Grid. And Solar Insiders is brought to you by Pylon, the essential solar design tool to grow your solar business with quick and effortless proposals that will impress your customers.
Hello and welcome to this latest episode of the Solar Insiders podcast. My name is Giles Parkinson. I'm the editor of Renew Economy and its associated website, the EV-focused The Driven. Joining me as usual is Renew Economy Deputy Editor and One Step Off the Grid Editor, Sophie Vorath. Sophie, I trust you are well.
I'm very well, and I just wanted to get in straight off the bat that it's a cracking day here in Melbourne. Very warm, blue skies, just in case you wanted to make a joke about our weather.
No, I don't want to make a joke about your weather. In fact, I was actually in Melbourne earlier this week and it was very, very pleasant. And I've actually flown back up north and I've been greeted with heat and humidity, gross humidity. And I kind of understand what Andrew Forrest means when he says lethal humidity, because if it gets much hotter and much more humid, then I'm just going to melt. So
Yeah, it's not fun and not good for the hairstyle.
well, I don't have to worry about that, so that's okay. Maybe I was born and bred to live in humid areas. Enough about that. Retailers and rooftop solar. You've got a cracking interview with Matthew van der Linden from Flow Power. What inspired you to do that?
I have. Well, Flow have just launched themselves. You know, they've been around since, I think they've been retailing since 2009, but we're around before that even. But they've mostly been in the C&I sector, commercial and industrial, but always renewables. And they've just launched themselves into the residential market, which some might say is a bit of a roll of the dice these days, unless you're a sort of an incumbent and you've got some other things going on. It's a really difficult game, but as Matthew says, it's a really exciting game, and there's heaps of opportunity if it's done right. And I think that's what we really discussed, how it's changing so rapidly, and retailers are really right there, building the bridge between the energy transition and consumers. And in that same way, it's beholden on them not to stuff it up, but it's also, they've got a lot of opportunity to really be right there at the grid edge and lead some of the really important reforms that need to happen. And part of that is sort of consumer education and bringing consumers along, which is what Matthew's really passionate about. So it was great to speak to him about that.
Let's have a listen to your interview with Matthew van der Linden from Flow Power.
Matthew van der Linden, welcome to Solar Insiders.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Now, you are the CEO and founder of Flow Power, which has been in the the renewable retailing business, I should say, since 2009. I think that's about as old as my son, which is amazing.
Yeah, well, and we're heading into it'll be 30 years next year that I've been running the business now. So I started out as an energy management business about 30 years ago called Utilicor, which some might know. And my son's now in the business.
Fantastic.
He's assisting and helping with the product development and hardware design for some of our systems. So he's about the same age as the business as well. He's roughly my measure for how long we've been around for.
Fantastic. That's a good measure. And it's great to hear that he's involved. And you sort of answered what part of my first question was going to be, which was it's not easy being a retailer when you're not one of the incumbents. It's no easy path. So why on earth did you take it? What brought you here, and what inspired you to be a retailer of renewable energy?
Yeah. So it's been a long history. I've always been very focused on a business that is there to service customers and make sure that they're getting the best out of everything the best deal that they possibly can get. But in terms of our retail model, we are a retailer that's very focused on trying to develop a retailer that can transition this market to 100% renewables. That's our goal, and our mission and core part of our vision is to really build a retailer that demonstrates what it takes to be what it's going to take to be a retailer in this new world, which is very different to historical and your traditional and your incumbents. So as we've looked to, what's needed to transition this market, it's really created a very diverse retail business that has, we've had to do so much ourselves just to get to where we are today.
Yeah.
We're building our own projects, developing our own hardware, writing our own software, um, and tackling markets that we probably, you know, so many people have said to me, why are you doing residential? Like it's a hard slog, and you need scale, and there's not a lot of margin in it. But when you look at the picture of transitioning this market, you can't leave it out. You have to tackle that and solve the problems. And I'm a firm believer that it can be an awesome market in terms of as a retail business coming into the market, and there's a huge opportunity to engage differently with the consumer.
Yes.
So that's what we're trying to do.
You keep beating me to the punch of my questions. So if you could just stop that, that'd be great. But yes, so as you say, you've launched into residential. So traditionally, Fo's been servicing the commercial and industrial sector very well and supplying packages of renewable energy. But yeah, you've just very recently launched into the residential market, starting in Victoria.
Yes.
And as you say, it's a really important piece of the puzzle. And I think, the broader part of the industry and other parts of the energy market are starting to cotton on to just how important it is, because really the retailers are going to be, the bridge from the customer to the energy transition. And with everybody constantly saying that consumers are at the core of this energy transition with our 4 million rooftop solar systems and counting.
Yep. Huge milestone.
Yes, enormous. It really is hugely important. So talk to us about what your offer is, because you talk about it being a technology integrated offer. So let's start there, shall we?
Yeah. So the residential, like we've obviously been working in C&I for a long time, and our model is very much to engage with consumers, have them participate in the market. We're very large in demand response and things like that. So our challenge was to take our learnings from the C&I and move them into residential, and how do we build a model that can engage with the consumer in a similar way, but still be accessible by everybody. So our offer is very much about trying to make it as easy as possible for the consumer to engage with the energy, with how they're using their power, and the effect that how they use their power has on the market, and their costs and everything else in between, the carbon footprint as well. So we've tried to build a retail model that essentially fully rewards, in fact, I would argue, over rewards people for behaving correctly when it comes to energy consumption and when they use power. And at the same time, trying to solve the complexity of making that, relatively easy, so that mums and dads and, literally anyone can participate. And how far they participate, it is up to them. You can definitely go on our product and not participate. Our offer is 100% renewable. We don't offer anything else other than that.
Yeah.
And our products are always tied to a project. So we will have a project sitting in the background, and we'll reserve portions of those projects for you. So some people sign up for that reason only.
I think it's great.
Yeah.
You know where your wines come from, and you can know where your powers come from.
Yeah, that's right. And we're trying to make that all very visible. So you can, if you want to engage it, we're trying to make that as enjoyable and as engaging as possible. And there's a lot of scope to do that. It's not a boring product. It's not a boring industry.
No.
It can be exciting, and I'm pretty excited about where we're at with respect to what we're developing.
And so on the technical level, how do you engage with the customers? You've got an app, I suppose, and there's also some hardware involved.
Yeah. So firm believer in access to data. So I think that's sort of, for me, without that, it's the engagement can only go so far. And we're dealing with electricity. It is the most dynamic commodity that you could possibly trade. Like, it's literally as real time as it gets.
Yeah.
So it kind of lends itself enormously to engagement. You go put your kettle on, it has an effect on your costs.
Yeah.
And the concept that an average household loads about half a kilowatt, but that people realize that a kettle is 2 kilowatts, which is literally 4 times your average. and it's this side of thing that people probably don't fully grasp, or the idea that just what is happening when I put my air conditioner on, plug my car in, or run the dryer. So live data is a key part of that. So what we actually supply a piece of hardware, which is the Zigbee controller at the moment, into every house that connects to the meter and gives you around about, I think it's around about, well, we'd like it to be 1 or 2 second live data. We think it's about 3 or 4 at the moment, depending on the distributor. But it's pretty dynamic.
Pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Better than every half an hour.
Better than every half an hour. Yeah. And so you can literally walk around the house and sort of say, and this happens to me all the time. I'm sitting downstairs coding away because I still write a lot of code in my work. And I get cold. I put the heater on. I don't realize the time. And then my wife walks in and says, "Why have you got the heater on? You know, it's 5 o'clock. Yeah, it's costing like $5 if you keep doing that." So anyway,
Oh, so you've got everyone in the house indoctrinated.
yeah, it's actually been really cool as we've rolled the product out, and Sue's, my wife, got really involved, and the kids are beginning to get involved too. Like they getting this new level of awareness that wasn't there, and every night I go to bed and Sue says, "Oh, when should I put the dishwasher on?" And I look up the app and I look forward, and it's the cheapest time is going to be 2 a.m. or if you can hold out, we go to 10 a.m. And so that's a regular behavior now in our household.
Yeah.
Just that very simple action of when should I put the dishwasher on?
I think it's really interesting, this talk about behavior and changing behavior. That's what really caught me. Obviously we spoke last week and we wrote an article on One Step Off the Grid about Flow Home, which is what your residential retail offer is called. But what really struck me was this concept of changing behavior, and I think I think it's an extremely valuable and important concept. Not just in the sense of saving money, which is, of course, it will
Yes.
do, but in the terms of sustainable thinking, sustainable living.
Yes.
Something that we should all be a lot more aware of is how we consume everything. And starting with energy is a great start. But there is some cynicism around about how much does the average person want to know about their energy use? How much, are they really interested? Would they much rather say, here, you do it, I'll hand it over to you, or would they would rather, just not even bother, kind of thing? Have their solar, get what they can from self-consuming and sending back to the grid, which is very little these days. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, are people up for it?
Well, it's one of those questions that we'll have answered very soon for you, but I am very that is our current goal. We're at this point where we must grow, and we just need customers to come on board and tell us what it's like. But our initial testing is really positive. Like I do firmly believe people will engage, and there's plenty of evidence to say they will, because you just look at consumer behavior around going and fueling up the car and buying petrol. People will go out of their way to find the cheaper.
Save their dockets.
Yeah, save their dockets. And you're at the store and something's cheap, you buy more of it, and stock up, and it's not expensive, so you don't. So these are the sorts of behaviors I think will flow through to the energy. The other thing I would say in energy, if you think about what people are willing to do to save, like you just take the example of how many solar panels have been installed across Australia. It's extraordinary at 4 million households. You look at the churn rates, and that is a behaviour of people trying to find a better deal and look around and shop around. These are all, in my view, really, really strong indicators that people will take an interest if it's worthwhile. And what we're offering is worthwhile from both an environmental standpoint, in terms of just simply being efficient and doing what I would argue is quite logical. And also from a cost perspective, it's tangible. It's
Yeah.
I've got so many examples now of people who just put a little bit of effort into engaging, and they're cutting 10-15 cents a kilowatt hour off their bill, which is like more than a third, just by simply doing a few things differently. So no, I'm I know there's always cynicism, but terms of proving them wrong.
Yeah. It's really interesting. We're at a really interesting point, because you sort of see, some portion of people saying, no one's interested, no one wants to know about it, they just want cheaper bills. And then you have the other part saying, well, no, you know. And I tend to be, like you, a bit more optimistic about what people, the engagement
Yep.
levels. But
We
yeah,
will
we
see.
will see. We will certainly see. And I think electric vehicles will play a big part in helping to engage
They
people,
will.
because that is going to be, once again, if you make that decision, and it's a big one, it's a big investment, to switch to a car like that, and you already have solar, you'd be pretty mad not to try and make the most of the fact that you can power it with electricity. So why wouldn't you try and power it with your own, and whatever you're generating on your own roof? And also, why wouldn't you try and, even if you haven't got any, try and charge up while everyone else's solar is pouring basically free electrons onto the grid.
It's very true, and I think there's two elements I'd add to that, because there's the it's not trivial. Like you get a car, it's a very significant consumption of energy. Depending on your household, it could double your load. So we're not talking a few cents here. We're talking, potentially hundreds of dollars a year. So it has that effect. So it's important in that sense, from a financial sense, about when you choose to charge. And then the other element that I think people will start to get a realization from, particularly if, we get the data out there and they see what's going on. I think a typical household has traditionally been around half a kilowatt or 4 megawatt hours a year. And that's definitely stepping up as we electrify. But that gives you about an average load of about half a kilowatt to a kilowatt, roughly. You plug in a car, and if you've got a proper charger at home, it'll go to 12 kilowatts.
Right.
So it's not like a small increase in load. It's a factor of 10 to 15. So there's the other element here is that these changes that are happening in the industry are very significant. And what I've learned on the residential journey is they're most significant at the home. The electrification of a house, the purchase of a car, obviously the installation of solar and battery, these are all not, minor tweaks to your profile, your load and load on the network. These are massive. These are huge. And if it's done wrong, we won't transition. That's the reality, is if we don't coordinate what's going on, and people don't step up to a degree with their level of knowledge of what's going on, we'll falter, and the transition will stall.
Yeah.
And this is why we're so dedicated and focused to it, in terms of trying to make sure that there's as best we can, a residential pathway to really engage, because once the consumer gets a bit of an idea of what's going on, I think they'll jump on board very quickly. Charging your car for free, there's nothing better.
No, I know. I would seriously be bragging about that to everyone if that was the case for me, which it sadly is not at the moment, but there's time.
We can fix that.
Yeah. I think what interests me too is that, as you were saying, this idea of the data. And, I think as much as the energy that these panels are producing, and perhaps the energy that's being stored in batteries or in batteries on wheels, as precious as that energy is, the data is also as precious, like for the market operator, for the network companies, and if we can't, as you say, build a bridge between customers and, if we can't sort of convince them that we're not going to sort of plunder their data and just use their resources in a way that suits the grid and not them, as you say, it's going to be a bit of a problem, because we really need to harness this huge asset with this huge sort of distributed energy power station that's on our rooftops.
Yeah, we do. And I think the role of the retailer is often not, it's probably one of the most critical roles in the market. And we often, what I often see the market doing, the industry doing, is trying to solve around the problem that retailers aren't particularly good at engaging with the consumer. But if we can get retailers to engage with the consumer really well, I believe the transition becomes a lot simpler, and all these issues around data and ownership and become a lot easier, because engagement with the consumer means that they can get their data, they can see what's going on, and when they do something, they get rewarded for it. Where so much of most people don't get that opportunity. They're on fixed rate products. They can charge in the middle of the day, and they will be helping the transition, but they won't be rewarded for it. So I do think this is why we've pursued this residential retail, because we firmly believe there's a much better way of doing it. And my hope is will be a roaring success, and other retailers will go, oh my God, we'd better do something, and start to transition. And once we get a few of the bigger players listening and watching, maybe they won't stay the big players, but we'll 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 hopefully accelerate the transition and get more retailers doing it.
Engagement wise,
Yeah.
I mean, considering today's technology and apps and all of that stuff, there's not a whole lot of excuses left for a lot of companies to not engage well. Just probably the thinking that's wrong-headed rather than there's plenty of ways to reach out. With your apps and your hardware, what does a sort of typical day look like if you've got a customer who's signed up and who's engaged, let's say, and they've got an EV and they've got solar? What kind of messages will they be getting sent, and how does it work for them?
Yeah. So we've tried to pursue a philosophy around, daily engagement.
Mhm.
Because you could pursue it in two ways. You could, we know we've got a very volatile market, and it's really exciting when it's volatile, and you can make $100 in a day very easily. And I think in New South Wales, you probably would have yesterday with the right
Oh,
behaviour.
yeah.
Um, but we're focused very much on daily engagement. So every day we've got a very strong intraday price, particularly in, say, Victoria. And our goal is just to encourage people to think about when they put the dryer on, the washing machine, the dishwasher. And that's something most people can do, and is in many cases very reasonable.
Mm.
So in our household, Sue she'll ask me when the cheapest time of the day. She definitely is running the washing machine in the middle of the day because she's worked that out, and it's a convenient time to do it as well. And then we have two EVs. So we have to charge them once to twice a week usually. So in the app, we can jump on the app, and the app will show us the next 5 days of which is going to be the cheapest day. It's often a Saturday, Sunday, which is also convenient for us,
Yeah.
but not always.
Mm.
Um,
But at least
and-
allows you to plan around that if it's not convenient.
yeah, that's right. And we'll make sure we charge the cars on those days. And then every day we just look at those simpler things that are possible to
Mm.
move loads around. And as we progress, we'll bring in a lot more automation. So our hub that we're putting out as part of a deal, at the moment, it's early days in what it can do. It's primarily there for live data, but it comes with a smart plug. And the ideas will be that you can put that on, say, the pool pump. Eventually, we'll integrate with hot water systems, heating systems, air conditioners. So that's going to be a very strong priority over the next 3 to 6 months of development for us, is to start to roll out other automation. So there's the things that take user interaction, and then there's the things that don't, like batteries don't. So yeah, that's probably a typical day. So do you need to do all that? No, you don't. But if you do, the app will show you what you're saving. It'll try to estimate, your current behavior is going to save you $5 today or $2 today. Or lose you $5 today because it's the wrong time, and you should take action to try and correct it.
Yeah.
And you'll be able to see, how far off you are and things like that.
And the idea is that, there's a baseline that you set for the customers where, if they want to have really minimum engagement, it's not going to be, they're not going to get penalized for it, or they're not going to suddenly, realize they've missed some event. I like this idea that you're not sort of, they're not chasing the big dollars and the big, and as you were saying, the big swings in the market and the big, but it's just more about setting in place behaviors that will, by and large, for the majority of the time, mean that they are keeping their bills as low as possible.
Yeah, and what we've seen some consumer behavior where they've got on board and they've really engaged with the app, and then over time they're using the app less, but they've learnt the behavior. They've learnt, it's actually not that complicated. They've learnt that the right time of day and things like that, and so they now just always run the dishwasher at the right time and so forth, and they're not, because they've learnt and understood the market better. They've their dependence on having to always look at the app is reduced.
Yeah.
And so that's been really positive to see. And then you do have the high price events, which we do obviously make sure people are engaged with, because they, if you you do that well, and it can be very rewarding. So, and if you do it badly, it might not be as rewarding. So, so yeah, there
Yep.
is two sides to it.
But it's not as linked to the wholesale market as some other offers.
In terms of our product, we're essentially a flat. When you sign up, you get a flat rate. Even if you're on a peak and off-peak tariff, you still sign up to a flat rate. So it's very simple there. And what we're doing is we're applying what we call a price efficiency adjustment, which is essentially an adjustment depending on how price efficient you are. So have you used more energy when the price is low and less energy when the price is high? And that's based on the market shape, you might say. So the way I explain the exposure, you might say, or the risk aspect of the product is it's a shape exposure. So, for the more technical, what that means is if you had a dead flat load that never changed, it was just always flat, your price adjustment would be zero. In fact, that's actually not true. It would actually be negative because we set our price adjustment to the average customer shape in the market. So the average customer should get a price efficiency adjustment of zero. And when they deviate away from the average shape, it will depend on how that shape compares to the pricing shape in the market. So is that change or movement in your load shape in unison with the energy price or in a mirror image of it? And then that's what governs your price efficiency. So what does that mean? It means, if you're above your average load at any point in time and the price is low, you're doing well. But if you're below your average load and the price is low, then you're not doing as well. That'll be not being super price efficient. So yeah, that's slightly more technical explanation. And for the real technical people who really want to understand what's going on, essentially what's going on behind this model is a CFD, a contract for difference. It's not completely that, but that's what it's modeled on in the background. And in addition to that, what we have also done is we've exaggerated, or what we have reflected the import and the export price curve. So the export price curve is the same as the import price curve for us. So that's been a deliberate step for us to encourage batteries. So batteries actually, I think batteries on our model will do better than any other retailer because of that step where we've reflected that price curve in both import and export.
On that subject of batteries, what are your feelings about home battery uptake? Do you think that we're about to hit our straps on that, or do you think a lot of people will just hold off and get an EV and sort of use that as their battery, so to speak? A much bigger battery, obviously. Or do you think home battery is going to become a bit like rooftop solar?
I'm very optimistic and bullish about that. I think people will take up batteries once we reach those thresholds, and I think we have reached those thresholds. Definitely on our product, batteries are looking really good. But there are still more we need the government to do. But I am very, very optimistic that batteries will be taken up very rapidly by the market. They're a very cool product. Like, I've just had one installed, and I was literally wasn't doing a podcast, but I was on a call with someone, and the lights flicked slightly, and I thought, what was that? And I went and looked up my app, and we had a power failure.
Oh, wow.
And everything just,
It was that split second of where it kicks in.
And so it was about a 50 millisecond transfer, and so the technology has really come a long way.
Yeah.
And they're very good products now. The only issue with them has been the cost, and that's improved so much in recent history. So I'm very optimistic that people will take them up, faster than we think, and it will build momentum. We do need the government to get on board and just evolve quickly. We're at this point in the evolution of the market where they need to shift those incentives.
Are you talking federally here? You think it should be on the SRAS?
Yeah, the STCs. So obviously, they need to. We have a lot of solar in the market. What we now need is solar and batteries. My view is we need to redirect those incentives to start encouraging people to get batteries rapidly, because this is where we're at in the market. That's the next part of the solution, and batteries will have such a positive impact on the outcomes of the market, particularly behind the meter. It is the place to put it in my view, and I think consumers will love it. I think having that there, it's as exciting, at least as exciting as solar, if not more.
And you mentioned that, upfront costs are coming down. Return on investment, is that improving as well? I mean, you sort of touched on that as far as with your product. I think sometimes people haven't been sold by that side of the equation either.
Yeah, it's batteries have always been difficult, and we weren't too long ago. We're in a place where you would never get a return because just the life of the battery wouldn't last long enough to get the return. We're now
Yeah.
in a position where that is now possible with the right household, the right solar setup, um, and the right payments for that. And our model is very much focused on getting over that limit. If we were able to redirect FTCs, then we'd definitely be over that threshold all the time. And that's what we need to get to as quickly as we can. But we are over that threshold in the right circumstance, definitely. So that's very encouraging. And we're doing that in a very simple way. Like, we're not doing it, we're not, VPPs have their place, and I think they're important part of where we're going. But I do think just customer engagement trumps that in many cases. And with a household that's properly exposed to the price signals and the market structures that already exist, the rewards are substantial without having to sign away your battery to a large incumbent or a large player.
Yeah.
My first month on the battery I ended up with a $70 credit, and I'm not particularly a small energy user, so that was really
Oh,
positive.
you've got a house of 7, is that right?
I've got 6 kids. I've only got 2 left at home, so I've got a large house that isn't super cheap to run sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Well, there you go.
our product isn't about being frugal. Like, I don't think that's the solution to the transition. I think as we electrify households, the energy usage is going to go up. It's very much about being efficient in how you use it, when you use it, and just understanding, like, I've got all my air conditioners on right now because the price is cheap and it's going to be a warm afternoon. I'll turn them down later.
Yep.
Yep. And I think that's very reasonable.
That part to me is something I'm really looking forward to, because I have every intention of, timing my air conditioning to suit my solar, and then I'm like you, I forget, and then think, oh my God, I didn't turn it off.
Yes.
So if someone could do that for me, that'd be great.
Yeah. It
Now, we'll wind up now, but I want to hit you with a big one at the very end. Well, maybe not big one, but as a retailer, or for retailers in 2024, nearly 2025, what is a must-have for every retail offer, in your opinion?
If I could control what all the retail offers that went out into the market right now, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I think that the ensuring the ability, the option at all times to engage and is super critical. I think that if that was to become standard and just an option for everybody, and technically it is now, I suppose, but you've really got to search it out. I think that would make a huge difference. I think people would just take it up, and you would, I don't know whether we'll reach 20% of the market fully engaging or 80%, but it's substantial, whatever the number is. It's not 2%. It's well above that. So
Yeah.
I think that for
Yeah.
me, if we could push all the retailers to offer, arguably a pathway to engage, I think that would make a big difference.
And is a pathway to engage basically access to their live data, or is that
I
more
think
or
that's
less?
Yeah, I think the access to the live data is super critical, and I think that capability for a consumer to say, I want live data, and for the market to have a clear pathway to provide it is super important. I know there's a rule change request, I think, out there at the moment about this, and that's super important. Like, we have it in Victoria, and arguably, I'll admit, it hasn't had a huge effect on the market in that we did the smart meter rollout with the Zigbee, and it hasn't had a huge take up. But this is this missing link of the retailer's role. You will never have significant take up if the main interface to the consumer isn't championing it. So that back to your first question, you need to get the retailers to offer that pathway, And then you need the data available for people to be able to see what they're doing and see the effect of what they're doing.
And easily
Super
understand,
important.
you know.
And easily
Yeah.
understand it.
Yeah.
Yep. And then you have to build the pricing around that makes that easy. Yep.
Simple job.
Simple job. That's right.
Simple job doesn't keep you awake at night at all.
Oh, no, not much.
Well, Matthew, it's been wonderful speaking to you about all of this and picking your brain about all this stuff and thanking you for fighting the good fight.
Yes. Well, thank you, Sophie.
We really look forward to watching your progress. And
I should finish off by saying, we've just launched, obviously.
yes,
We're aiming to get to 2,000 sites by the end of the year, so it's early days. And anyone that is willing to give us a go, we are learning a lot. So we're really keen for feedback of the product. And we are also limited to Victoria right now, unfortunately. We haven't quite got a solution to the live data in other states, but that's coming very soon.
that's coming with the smart meter rollout that the AEMC is very much hoping happens.
Yes, that's right. And we'll hopefully do it quicker than that. We hopefully will have a technical solution next year.
Okay.
Yeah. Obviously, we don't have the Zigbee rollout, the smart meter rollout in other states that like they did in Victoria. So we're leveraging off that technology that's there, which has its challenges as well, but that's getting there. So yeah, anyone that's interested, you can expression of interest in other states and sign up in Victoria. So very keen to.
Well, there you go, Victorian listeners. Get onto it.
Yes.
Because
give us a
the
try.
more people who join up and offer feedback, the better we can make these things and the better example we can set for the rest of the industry. It's fantastic to have you on, and we'll touch base with you again sometime soon. I think in the new year, and just see how everything's going and see how these rule changes are going.
See if we got to 2,000.
Yeah, I believe in you. All right, Matthew. Thanks so much.
Thank you for your time.
And that was Matthew van der Linden from Flow Power talking to Sophie. Yes, nice question, Sophie. Yes, why would you want to do that?
Yeah, I mean, look, he's one of those really inspirational people that just is in it, in it all the way, and really lives and breathes it. And as you said, even his eldest son is involved now in the business, and it's great to see. It's great to see people with passion, and who want to be all about renewables as well.
And it wants to make a difference. And I think that's actually going to be welcomed by lots of consumers, because lots of consumers kind of look around at the incumbents and the current things, and they find it hard to spot a difference between the different offerings from the major companies. They find it hard to sort of spot a transition plan that is going fast enough. And to have a new, smaller retailer in there with different ideas, focused on renewables, absolutely passionate about the scale and the pace of the transition that we need, and basically just coming up with new ideas, because that's very much what we need. The consumers are going to own the majority of the assets. They need to be listened to rather than just tariffed.
Yes, exactly. And for those ones who do want to be engaged, and there's some debate around about what proportion of consumers do want to be engaged, but for those who do and who want to sort of have a bit more control over their energy use and efficiency and etc., it can be really rewarding as well. So yeah.
But it's not just people who want to be engaged. I mean, anyone who's got like an asset or anyone who consumes just wants to be treated fairly.
Exactly.
So if you can actually create sort of, a design of a scheme that sort of, rewards those who want to be engaged but still plays fairly with the rest of them, then, and that's kind of, God, it's almost the story of the energy market, isn't it? As well, we had that sort of default market offering. Basically, people just sort of ripping off all those people who didn't know or didn't have the effort or didn't have the skills to find sort of better. I mean, look, a lot of them probably rich enough that didn't care, but there's a lot of vulnerable people out there also who had no choice. And I think that's just been one of the underlying themes of the consumer retail sector, and kind of solar's gotten caught up in that quite a lot, and batteries and EVs as well. It's sort of deemed to be the technologies of the well-off and the rich, when in fact it can so obviously be the solution. It's not really the enemy. It's kind of the solution if it's marshaled and presented and packaged up and regulated and tariffed properly.
Yeah, absolutely. And ultimately, anyone with a mobile phone can be in communication with their retailer. There's very few excuses now for retailers not to be communicating well and clearly with their consumers.
So look, let's go off to other news of the week. We got a bit of an update for the solar installs for the latest month, and wasn't bad, but it wasn't terrific.
Wasn't bad, yeah. It's sort of funny like that. We had that wonderful milestone last, in November, 4 million residential rooftop solar systems, and then it sort of seems like the market's like, whew, we're just going to take a little breather.
I want to
And
lie down.
yeah, yeah. So not a slump by any means, but as Warwick Johnston from Sunwiz points out, quite disappointing in the sense that previous Novembers have been really a month for a lot of activity. So whether that's sort of just changing or whether we're going to see a really big December, who knows? But it's still tracking along the same sort of gross trajectory as last year. So it's not all bad, but and meanwhile the system sizes just keep getting bigger. But I think that's possibly partly to do with the fact that it's the commercial side of the rooftop solar market that's still really marching on. Residential is the one that has cooled a little bit.
Indeed. And look, there was also some interesting news about SunDrive, the sort of the Australian solar technology company that's trying to get rid of silicon and use copper instead. What's the latest from them?
Get rid of silver, I think you mean.
Sorry, did I say get rid of silicon?
Yeah.
I meant
Still
to
want
say.
silicon.
We still want silicon. Okay, let's keep the silicon. Let's just get rid of the silver. Goodness gracious me.
You were halfway there.
It began with S. I knew that.
SIL even.
Oh, I know. Well, there you go. I was halfway there. You're right.
Well, they've met one of their key milestones from the funding arrangement they had with Arena, which is, I think really important news to report because this is all part of the Arena funding that, I think some coalition members were huffing and puffing about a few weeks ago at Senate estimates and talking about rent seekers and shell companies and blah, blah. So it's good to remember that these companies have pretty strict milestones to meet, and SunDrive has well and truly met it. They've shown that they've got a production yield of their copper solar cells exceeding 99%, which basically means that the cells they're producing, more than 99% of them are of the commercial quality and able to be made into modules, which is really, really good production yield. So that's them saying to Arena, we're on track. You can keep funneling that funding through, and this is what it's all about. And so it was just really good to touch base too with Natalie Mallaghan from SunDrive to talk about, their goals because they set goals a while ago, and these have to be sort of refined every now and then. And so it's just really interesting to note that what they're planning to do with Trina, the Chinese solar giant, in applying for this Sunshot funding, is to make a module manufacturing facility in Western Sydney. And because I think they'll start making modules in Australia, and they'll be using Trina's silver TopCon cells to start with, and then once their own solar cell facilities are up to speed, which they're on track to be, they'll start swapping the Trina solars out and SunDrive cells in. So yeah, that's the sort of plan, and it seems to be going to schedule at the moment, which is really great to see because this is really great Australian innovation once again out of UNSW, and it's what it's all about, supporting Australian innovation and seeing whether we can do it here.
Right, rather than over there.
Yes, exactly. Rather than just shipping all of our amazing IP overseas.
Yes.
And buying it back.
We're talking about some IP. I went to the APVI Solar Research annual conference in Sydney this week, at least one day of it. And that's basically it's different from the normal solar conferences that we're used to seeing, where you're seeing big sort of installers and suppliers and massive great big booths and all sorts of deals done. This is just really around the researchers. People have been working on different things. Look, it was fascinating to see and to hear just the breadth of the conversations, not just in the latest developments in actual sort of solar cell technology and the cost reductions and some of the efficiencies that they're still trying to achieve, and some of the new technologies such as perovskites that they're still trying to sort of manage and control and bring to commercialization, but also a focus on recycling, circularity, integration into the grid, getting solar into apartments, getting it into low-income households, just the whole gamut of the thing. And look, it was actually sort of quite fascinating to see. And I did do an interview there with Roger Dargeville from Monash University, who's also the chair of the APVI and was one of the hosts there. So listen for that on this week's episode of Energy Insiders, which will be out later this week.
Great.
So thank you very much, Sophie, for your interview with Matthew van der Linden, and thank you to Matthew and Flow Power for their participation, and good luck in their ventures. Thanks everybody out there for listening to our podcast. Thanks, of course, to our sponsor, Pylon. And we'll be back, I think, Sophie, with one more episode of the Solar Insiders podcast before we break for Christmas.
That sounds about right.
Thanks for that, and we'll be back soon. Bye for now.
Solar Insiders was brought to you by Pylon. Pylon provides easy-to-use solar design software for solar installers and retailers with pay-as-you-go pricing, no monthly costs and no lock-in contracts. Join Australia's top solar companies who trust Pylon to design high-resolution, CEC-ready solar proposals.